Our next agenda item is discussion possible action, postage machine lease for, well, postage machine lease.
Yes, about every 5 years, we need to renew our lease for our postage machine, scale, and so on. And the town hall gets one, but the Board of Ed needs to pick up, I believe, 6 for the schools as well as the administrative offices across the hall. So we've been going out together as a group, and usually the Board of Ed will negotiate it and include us with one, so that we all get the same machine at a reasonable, same price, even though it's off of state bids. So all this is just the approval to renew the lease with Quadian Inc., which is probably a name of some machine, postage machine company we dealt with in the past, but with mergers and acquisitions and so on. So it's, again, it's for 5 years, and would start sometime in the middle of July.
John, is the price of the per month, is that for all 7 or is that for each machine?
Oh, each machine.
Each machine is that, okay.
But out of the town side of the budget, it's only the $160.90.
Yes, a
The
month.
other ones come out of the Board of Ed budget?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's just a formality where supposedly the town council is supposed to approve all leases and so on. So that's why we just included the Board of Ed in it as well. But again, it's only one machine, and it's right out here in the town manager's suite.
Okay. All right.
Do we get any kind of postage discount by using a machine, or like what's just like, because we have the post office across the street, what's the advantage for having a machine versus just?
Yeah, I think we save a little bit over a penny. They come in and they send us something that updates our postage. So we do have a savings by using the machine, but it's maybe a penny. Say you're paying 51 cents a stamp, we may pay like 49.7, something like that.
Okay, so offsets the price.
But
Okay.
it does make a savings, and we do have assessor's department mailing out items, as well as the tax department mailing it. Well, I think we got around the tax department mailing it because our printer does it. So, but if we do have a large mailing for delinquent taxes, yeah, we save money.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the lease for the postage machine?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve the lease on postage machine on the town side as noted in our packet.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just had a question. So are we what is the ask here? Because it's town council resolution. Are we moving this to consent agenda?
Yes,
For
we'll be on the
Monday's
consent
meeting?
agenda.
Okay, so do we
For
need
those
to
who
amend?
got their packets today, yes, you'll see it on the consent. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, so the motion that we would need here is just to move it to the consent agenda.
Correct.
Okay, so just amend my motion to move this to the consent agenda for our next town council meeting.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Discussion, refunding bonds.
Yes, in order for the town to refund some of the bonds, Joe Fozzie sent me over a list of things that we need to do at one of the council meetings in May, as far as getting council authorization to do that. The town had issued about $18.1 million of bonds back in 2014. The Congress is proposing bills, either on the infrastructure bill or other bills, to try to allow refinancing of or refunding, advanced refunding of bonds and making them a tax-free transaction. They haven't been allowed to do it since, I think, 2017. But if they do allow it, then we could go out and refinance or refund those 2004 bonds and probably save maybe close to $500,000 by doing that, being a tax-free transaction. So what we want to do is get authorization from the town council to do that, and then when the opportunity, either the passage of the bills that will allow us to do it, we'd be able to move quickly and refund those bonds and generate some savings for the town. So all it is just putting on notice so that probably when you see something on the agenda in the May town council package, you have an idea that it's just a requirement the town has to do in order to go out and refund some previously issued bonds. So there's really no action, it's just an FYI.
And John, are these bonds, these new issued bonds, would they be tax exempt at the state level or federal level or both?
I believe the main one is at the federal level.
Okay,
I'm not sure about the state, but they're going after the federal one so that there's greater savings there.
yes, okay. And would this change any of our strategy about the bonds we're talking about issuing in July?
Not really. What it will do is over time will reduce our debt service payments, either taking it earlier or amortizing it over a longer period of time. But it will actually change more of our current $18 million bond principal and interest payments. What happens in July is just an issuance of a new one that hopefully will get lower rates than we would have just due to market conditions. They're sort of two separate transactions.
But do we know if, I guess it's a guess, but will this bill, do you think the bill will pass to make the July issuance tax exempt? Or are we going to be before that is I guess what I'm asking.
Hopefully it will pass.
Okay.
But when is the question, whether they'll attach it to the infrastructure bill as you know, as a hanger-on, or perhaps have it as a standalone bill that maybe they'll pass because of the benefit it would be to municipalities as well as states. But when they're going to do it, that's the question. Hopefully sooner than later.
Right. I guess the question that I guess I'm getting to, would we issue bands instead of a bond, not knowing what the outcome is, or?
Well, I think it's better to issue the bonds based from an issuance cost standpoint, because the project will be done, and it does cost money every time you do issue bands and bonds. So from that standpoint there, we'd be saving issuance costs and getting it into play. And I don't know if, what the impact might be on new issues as opposed to refunding issues.
Right. All right. I mean, I guess it's part of it. I know I'm asking questions, but we don't have answers yet until it passes.
I'm doing a
Just
nice
trying to get
job
a feel.
dancing around them, aren't I?
I'm just trying to get a feel for what the right approach is and if there's significant savings as, of course, we start our budget season.
Well, I think there'll be savings definitely if we can do an advanced refunding.
Yeah.
What happens in July, that hopefully the rates will stay low and we have a low interest rate.
Okay.
On the bonds that we would be refunding, are we, besides any taxes which we would now avoid if this goes through, are there any prepayment penalties or make-whole payments we'd have to do?
No. When you go out and bid it, they'll structure the deal so that there's probably no prepayment penalties associated with it.
Okay, good.
Basically, we could refinance this in April of '22, uh, according to the bond. But if they pass the advanced refunding, then they could, the people that are interested in doing the refunding deal would structure it so there's no prepayment penalties or anything like that.
Okay. And these bonds that you're contemplating to refund, were these initially 20-year bonds in 2014 or?
Yeah, we pretty much issued 20-year bonds.
So if we do that, are we going to go another 20 years or will we go like 14? I don't know
No,
if that's
it'd
not,
probably be closer to 14.
you can,
They
so you can,
restructured under that, so it'd be 13, 14, 15, around that time frame. But I'd say like an average of 14 years.
so we're going to keep the timeline pretty close to what it is now. We're just going to hopefully pay
Right.
less in.
But our interest payments should drop quite a bit.
Super.
Do we know that what the rates are for those previous bonds that we looked to refinance as I mean, we don't know what the rate's going to be in July or whenever the bill becomes effective, but we know about what we could potentially shave off the current rate.
Not really. We're thinking that because if we do it now, it'd be treated as a taxable bond and it wouldn't generate the savings. So it's really difficult to say what it's going to be until the law allows you to do these tax-free advanced refundings, and then it will create a market for that because we won't be the only ones doing it. So the rates would probably be established more at that point in time.
Any other questions on the refunding bonds? No?
Well said.
Okay.
Okay.
Move forward to our FEMA-related expenses. Is that still you, Mona?
It's still me.
You tired of talking about these?
No, I think I better get used to it. It hasn't gone away and it may not for a while.
Yeah.
So I'll start with the little cover page and then go touch on the additional pages that you had in the packet on a high level. So what we're looking at on the COVID portion of FEMA, it's changed a bit at the top. Originally, we had about $48,000 in from the ambulance. If you may remember that they had some chest compression units that they had submitted for reimbursement since our last meeting. We've had a review and FEMA rejected those. They felt that they were excessive, not necessary. They were not something that a prudent individual would purchase to deal with the COVID situation. So they were rejected. That left ambulance with a small dollar amount, about 5,000 of PPE requests, and the request that came from FEMA at that point was a concern, being even though it's a volunteer ambulance that they do bill for service, so the requests were coming in for logs of their services, their billing, what was the percentage of billing, and their basically their request for documentation was far exceeding the amount of reimbursement. So we took the ambulance requests off of the FEMA reimbursement, and we'll move those into the portion that's coming from the OPM, the CRF money. So going down toward the money that we have from the state, the 180 from the CRF, there's a line that's now new that says state 25% decommit. So I'm going to jump a little bit to that first document that you had attached. It was a 2-page that came from the state that mentioned the American Rescue Plan Act. And although we had hoped that it was giving direction on what was going to be done with the American Rescue Plan money, it didn't address that. That tells us that will come in the near future. But what it did tell us is that rather than a 75% reimbursement from FEMA, they are going to 100% reimbursement, and it's retroactive to the beginning, which was the March 2020. So that was really what that 2-page document was telling us. So the flipping onto my little one-page summary, that decommit was the amount, the 25% we received from the state. That was their match. That will now come to us to be used, and FEMA will offset that because they're going to honor 100% of what was submitted in the previous year. So going forward, we'll have from our CRF money, putting that back in, about 146,000 to look at. I think I'll go a little bit on that 8-page document that was along with it. We won't talk about the whole 8 pages, but the highlights of what was in there, they are extending what we've been doing with the COVID is really what that's telling us. That they're going, originally the last COVID reporting was going to end in December. Now they're going to extend it from the January 2021 into September. And they're adding a couple of extra areas that may help us in some cases, safe opening and operation work. So when we do open the building, if we had to do any disinfecting, special cleaning and so forth, those type of things would be reimbursable. And we put him through the same process that I have with everything else since the beginning of the pandemic. They've got other where it's the what they're calling the equitable recovery, which was discussed, I think, in page 3, which really doesn't apply to us because we are not one of those underserved populations, so to speak. So we won't probably be able to take advantage too much of those expenses. But I think we will be able to do at least anything to reopen the town, anything from, doing the cleaning, anything to notify the public, any public notifications and so forth. So we'll be able to continue to put in requests. And believe it or not, that's really the highlights of a very long document.
So
Matt?
Mona,
Yeah.
could we break that down just into real easy numbers?
Sure.
With the change from the American Rescue Plan, how much additional revenue is the town potentially receiving?
Well, as we saw, we did receive retroactively the 25,000, which was good.
Right.
I think what we're seeing, at least I'd say from January through March, because we didn't know that this was going to come forward. And for the most part, I think the departments have kind of taken it easy, I'd say, or being very conservative on any of the PPE, the masks and the gloves. And the only thing that we've really been trying to focus on is like the fire and the police where the necessity is in place. So if we were to submit January through March, we would be talking about, I'd say about $10,000.
Okay.
If we had to come up with an estimate of when we reopen, I don't know if I'd be able to put that, but I'd say it's probably about maybe another 15 to 20 on top of that. Because for the most part, when we started, we put all these barriers in place and the signs and the rope. So I think we're in good shape as far as just setting up for the opening.
But the 25,000 that we're talking about was originally a decommit, or was originally disallowed by FEMA.
Correct.
And was then put to OPM. So it kind of nets to zero.
Yes. Yes,
So
but
just
what
a shift of
OPM,
who it's
yeah.
coming from.
What's that?
It's just a shift of who the money's coming from.
It's a shift, but it also, what OPM is saying is now you can use that. So they've already given it. So
Okay.
it's an additional. So they're saying they're going to give you the 25, they didn't, and we're letting you keep it and use it for other purposes, still
Okay.
COVID related.
Right.
So it is a plus.
Okay.
So Mona, kind of along those lines, is just to think out of the box a little bit, maybe. The health district fee we pay annually as a town, can we put that under the OPM allocation?
If we could justify it's the COVID related, so it wouldn't be just health districts in general. Their ruling is very strict. Like I said, just for example, with the ambulance, it has to be very specific. It had to be COVID related, so if they were doing something that was different, so not their regular operations, but if they did say that they were doing, additional testing, I think similar to what they came forward and mentioned, then we could put that through.
I mean, I can't say how they work their organization, but it'd almost be better if they could break it down between what they do for their normal duties per year versus extra for COVID. So like, let's say if 20% of that amount was COVID related, then we could actually use that money to pay 20% of our fee to them. I don't know if they've thought of, because all the towns are gonna have the same question that are part of the district. I wonder if that's something they would consider doing. So we can use some opium money to pay their
Right.
expenses.
And that's definitely something that they do ask on the FEMA level, is if you can log the COVID versus non-COVID and give at least a good justification, they will consider. Not that they will honor it, but they will definitely give it more consideration. And we've had some luck, at least in the past. And I'll go back, for example, the ambulance that we were able to put some things through because they were able to document.
Yeah, and in fact, it could apply to the current fiscal year as well as what we're going to be owing for the next fiscal year. So, and I know we had a separate charge from them that we got OPM reimbursement for, but I mean, John, is that something we can go back to them to ask the question? Because I would think it would help all of their member towns if we could say, for example, we get 20% of the current year's fiscal year amount and 20% of the next fiscal year's amount, all of a sudden that's it's probably approaching $100,000. So.
Yeah, we could ask them, but again, we might be able to get a percentage of it because we pay them pay them a fee every year to do other items and so on that's associated with restaurants and swimming pools and things like that. So we can check with them. I don't know what capabilities they have as far as breaking out the accounting for that, but we can check, see what happens.
I mean, if it's 1 or 2%, then it's not going to move the needle at all. But if it's stuck into 20%, maybe find some money for us. So.
Yep.
So if we're good with COVID, I wanted to touch a little bit on again, in the FEMA area with the storm Isaias. We've been working pretty hard on getting reimbursement on that. Again, they're allowing us to submit for not only the overtime and tree removal costs that we had, but also any straight time. And we're probably at about 95% of the way through our review in talking with them. I had a recent review earlier this week. The 436,000 has dropped slightly. We're down to about 420 after reviewing some of the straight time and equipment use items. But at this point, I think we're still at a good place as far as the review is going. So I feel good about what's happening with the storm reimbursements at this point. That's it.
And we haven't gotten any of that money yet, or?
No. What they're going to do is they're submitting it kind of as a state, and then they're going to do it as the entire project. But they felt that it's the overall statewide is moving rather quickly with the review. It's a lot quicker than the COVID, in all honesty.
So, I mean, is it likely we may get this in the next fiscal year at this point?
I would think so. I think at this point, I mean, even if it's the commitment is there and it's measurable, it could be recognizable in this fiscal year as a receivable. So it could still be something that could help us with the expenses that we have this year. That's my ideal. So, if it's not measurable, then it would be revenue into the following.
And Mona, we've paid the $436,000 to either the vendors or town staff. We're not holding up paying those bills.
No, everything is paid out.
Right, okay. So it's just a matter of the reimbursement, the revenue side coming in.
Correct. Yeah. And actually the 92,000 that is equipment use was not even an actual expenditure. That's a matter of showing the vehicles, for example, if one of the highway drivers had a snowplow or a bucket truck in this case, then it's the value of using that truck. So that wouldn't even be dollars out. That's actual, the usage and reimbursement for that value.
Okay. Any other questions on this, Chris?
Yes, just that last point, it's kind of interesting. So I think it makes sense for, you know, like Al mentioned, we have invoices for extra tree work or you know, shoring up an account that we use to pay overtime out of. But for something like that, where we're basically paying for say unplanned depreciation on the equipment during the storm, do we put that in a fund for when we need to go out for new leases of those trucks, or does that just go back into the more like the general fund, the operating fund?
Well, this will actually basically be treated or split into two areas. Those that were actually paid out are already pulled away from the general budget and put into a separate fund already. So it'll be to reimburse those that have been pulled out, such as the tree removal and all the overtime. So that overtime you won't see in your general budget when you're looking through the expenses in this report. So it'll cover those first, and then anything else, again, depending on the timing, you know, should go into general fund, or, you know, in some cases it'll go to non-reoccurring if it has to roll to the next year.
Thanks.
Okay.
I guess we'll move forward to item 5, update and reserve on capital and non-reoccurring expenditures through March 31st.
There really not much has been happening through there because of the finishing of the school roof and the purchase of the electronic sign and so on. The only concern is the balance is getting lower. It's a little over $800,000. And generally it's been up in the millions in the past, but it's just a reflection of the balance we have left for a few of the projects that we set money aside for. Probably the biggest one is probably the sidewalk one, and I know the engineering department is looking to do a sidewalk project, I think associated with maybe Glastonbury Avenue or not, but that's about the only thing we have really pending out there. Most of the other projects are wrapped up.
Okay. All right. Not seeing any questions on that.
Good.
So we'll move forward to the state aid to municipalities.
There was no state aid this month.
This is becoming an easy meeting.
It is.
All right. Well, I guess the next payment is it August? No, we got a June for the Pequot grant.
And did we get our April ECS? No, you said no payment, so
No.
we're expecting to get it later
Well, I
this
should
month.
say, yeah, I'll correct. For the March report, which is in your package, there's been no state money. Because we're now on April 15th, we did get the Pequot for April 1st, although you'll see it at next meeting because I had to cut off. And you're right, the ECS will come the end of April, so April 30th. So
Right.
it's still all my excitement for next month's state report, but I'll say it again.
We always like to know it's coming at least. At least we
Yeah,
got it.
it's coming. It's coming.
I like seeing the cell get filled in the spreadsheet myself.
It's called the T's in the business, I think. Stay tuned next month.
That's right.
All right. So far, you're making it fairly easy. Monthly financial report for March 31st.
Yes. So first we have our tax collector's monthly report. And you can see we're at 98.8, which is a good collection rate, but in comparison to our 3-year average, about 462,000 behind where our benchmark would like us to be. But as we know, we did a delay payment plan twice this year. This is a reflection of what we're getting for the April 1st payment coming through. At least, you know, promising is that as of today, we have collected an additional 250,000, 240, 250,000 so far. So I think we're going in the right direction. They'll be sending out delinquent notices and demands notices around the first week of May. So hopefully we'll be seeing the collections pick up and close out the year right where we need them to be. Go to other revenues. Pardon me, I wrinkled my paper. We know where our taxes are. State revenue, I just alluded to where we're going with that. We'll get our ECS and our Pequot money. We'll be on target with that. As usual, we have our interest is still very low. And I think we'll continue to close the year that way and be a problem issue. The solar energy is a timing matter that will come in at the end of the year. Otherwise, we seem to be on target. I'd say to point out the conveyance tax and is doing extremely well. And the building permits slightly behind, so we're still going to watch that possibility that it still ends up a bit under budget, but we'll continue to see what's happening. Okay. If we're good
Questions
with-
from Mona at this point? No. Mona, just, and this is more of a general question. The conveyance tax, I know we're ahead of budget. But I also, from reading the local papers, listening to the news, there's not a heck of a lot of real estate available in town or anywhere for that matter. So is I guess the answer, possibilities that'll probably level off.
I believe it
Plus
will.
things are, I mean, they're selling in 1 or 2 days from what I'm
Right.
reading.
Yes, yeah, and I think you'll see from like, the refinancing and so forth, but I think you're right, this will, so, as good as it is, I think we'll be happy with 127%.
Okay.
Actually, I did have one quick question. Not that's private material, but animal licenses, 0. Is that just recorded in another line now, or?
Yes, it is. You'll find that the majority of it is going to the dog fund, which is a different fund. It'll be funding itself, but you'll also see that it's going to pick up at the end of the year. So they're doing a timing thing. When they do the dog licenses, it'll pick up. So at this point, it's more of a timing that you're seeing, as well as anything else that's going on, mostly during the activity of the year, is going into the dog fund, which would be more of the, any of the fines and so forth. That would go into the fund itself. The renewing licenses will appear here, comes more toward you'll see at the end of the year as they pay for the July.
Okay, thanks.
And then Mona, on building permits, is there any projects that are starting up that we're aware of that may help close that gap? Or is it smaller projects that we're hoping to fill this, or?
Well, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you, but we can find out for the next meeting. I don't know, John,
Okay.
did you have anything?
Don't know of any major projects starting, so I think it'd be more a lot of home improvement ones.
Yeah,
Because I think a lot of our Cromwell Avenue work has been done at that medical center. Pretty much done. So no, I think it's going to be hopefully a lot of ambitious residents that want to do some improvement to their homes.
All right, so we definitely have a potential for a shortfall in that area, especially right now with the difficulty of getting materials and tradesmen to do these projects. So we got to kind of expect that if there's not a big project coming along, that we may actually have a shortfall in that area. And that's why I was asking.
yes.
What about, have they completed the build out of Town Center West? Or they still have more phases to go there?
They have more, I think at least 2 phases to do, 2 more buildings that they need to construct. And I don't think they have any plans on doing anything, because usually they got to get a commitment from a tenant before they can actually get the construction financing.
Gotcha.
All right. No other questions? I guess we'll go through the expense side.
I think the only thing I might help us, Alan, before we move
Yeah.
along is they're supposed to be putting in a Mercury gas station down by where the Scuba Shack used to be.
Yep.
Depending on if they're going to start doing that, because they sort of got put on hold during the virus crisis. So that could be something that could come along, maybe. But and then also down the road someday, perhaps that hotel and restaurant near 91 may be going in, but I don't think that would help us this year.
Right,
Mercury is a long shot that might come in as something that
Yeah.
they might start doing before the end of June.
right, because now we're April, May, June to kind of get the permits pulled. I
Right.
would think things would already be possibly in the works. We'd have an idea they're coming.
Yeah.
Okay. So something to really keep an eye on for the next month or two and as we go through.
We'll bring you some more information on it next time.
Fantastic.
As far as expenditures, again, we're just about 75% of the way. So we can see that for the most part, departments are falling in that range. You have some that are having just a timing issue. You'll have your IT department, like I've mentioned before, a lot of their software and policies and so forth are going to be renewed, and it comes more toward the spring, their renewals. So you'll see some of those expenses increase toward the end. We're watching so the fire they had for training and firefighting stipends. Again, that's more of a quarterly. So they had a slow pace on that initially. So we'll watch that for timing issues. And our usual low departments being in human services for the senior activities. As we know, we have nothing with the food expenses, the senior programs, organized activities, although they're starting to do more programs. So that the beginning of the year allowed that to be a lower budget usage. So for the most part, I think I had to point out that for education, those numbers are as of February. Their numbers for March came in a few days late, and that hasn't been updated to this point. So I think overall contingency still at 78%. And so we'll watch, see if we have our retirements come. That might take a little bit out of there, but I believe at this point we're very close. So it will be a tight year as we watch the revenues coming in slightly low, and these, for the most part, departments coming in at budget, except for a few areas that are slightly under. So it will be close as we balance the two.
Now, looking through, basically we're done with 3/4 of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And with the fourth quarter going, is there any changes that you may need to implement to make sure we stay on budget? I mean, I know it's stuff you look at regularly, but
I think, well, so I know John and I discussed it. I don't think we are at that point where you need, he's going to chime in, but I think there's probably areas that have savings that it may not be a concern, or at least an emergency concern. I don't know, would you say the same?
Right. I think we're actually in pretty good shape considering we usually have our problem areas with the overtime and so on, but we should start seeing a drop in that because of the weather, and we can control doing overtime in the spring and summer and just do it during regular time. So I think we're in pretty good shape. I think the only surprises we get is retirements, and
Right.
I think we're finished that because any retirements that come in now will go into next year's because they got to give us 3 months notice. So.
okay.
And again, ideally we'll get that storm money. If that's measurable, that will help offset any possible concerns for this fiscal year, which is,
Along those same lines, the education line item, we've only spent 54% through 9 months. Now I know some of those months are through 8 months because there's a month missing, but I know some of those months were summer months. But do we think that's going to come under budget?
if I were to make the projection, I would say yes. But I'm sure that if you ask education, they would say that was not a fair statement, but I think at this point, my estimate would be yes. But and of course, they've got the ability to encumber, their expenditure lines and so forth, if need be, but I'd say it looks like it's slightly low.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
know,
Jeff, that's a good question to ask on May 4th.
right. Ask them what they thought about my statement.
Do you agree with Mona's statement?
According to our treasurer.
Yeah.
What do you have?
Just we'll get the quote for you to read. Do you agree with this quote?
I'm just the messenger, I'm just.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
For another line that seems to be under is the capital improvements are about 56%. That's because we were waiting for spring to do some other projects.
Plus the
Um,
I was gonna say the larger items are Board of Education as well, so I think you'll find.
Yeah, the Board of Ed has 200,000 in there, and I think we haven't charged anything against sidewalk repair yet.
Correct.
I'll have to check with that one, but I think other than that, I think we pretty much covered most of our expenditures. Do we have any big lease payments coming through?
No, our lease payments are pretty much on track. I think you'll find that it was the Town Aid Road, which eventually will be updated for salt charges and tree care, but so there'll be some adjustments there. But for the most part, it's the Board of Ed expenditures and the sidewalk.
Any further questions? No, seeing none, let's go through legal expenses then.
Yeah, there's a copy of, there's a copy of the legal expenses through February. Pretty much the same pattern with some assessment monthly charges, and pretty much that's it. Is primarily our assessment charges now. I don't know what the last 3 months will hold for us with any additional legal expenses from the town attorney, but so far nothing major is hitting us yet.
Questions on legal fees? No?
No.
No, all right. Do we have anything for other?
Well, we mentioned about forewarning you of our leaks that are springing up in the town hall building, especially on rainy days, of course. Again, we just got to stop to think that the building is 20 years old since we took occupancy around 2002. So we're starting to see some of the age things hitting. And so that's just forewarning both finance and government ops, something may be coming down the road, see what Phil has to say next government ops. Then Mona can tell you some exciting things that are happening in June.
Oh, that's correct. We have scheduled, our auditors are coming in for their preliminary review for the first week of June. So they'll just do their first week, they just do some initial review, and their full review will be the second week of September for 2 weeks. So right after Labor Day, they'll be in for 2 weeks. So we expect that they'll be doing a combination of remote and physical review this year. So last year was for the most part entirely remote, but we're going to try to do more on-site. But I think they enjoyed part of the remote and emailing and so forth. But so we're looking at June 7th and September 7th for 2 weeks.
And John, just as I'll ask the question, I'm sure you have are probably as stymied as I am, but have you gotten any information on the American Recovery Plan to what actually constitutes infrastructure improvements? Or are we all getting the same literature that's saying, wait for the Treasury to rule?
Yeah, pretty much all the literature you're getting now is what is in the bill itself. Those 3 points about essential workers and helping businesses and so on. And then it's just those statements about water, sewer, and broadband. And that's about it. And we're being told that between OPM and the Treasury, we should be getting information in the early part of May. So every time you see information relating to that act, it's the same thing that you read a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Nothing really changes until this released by the Treasury Department.
Okay. And have you gotten, I know the number that's been published is like 1.9 million roughly for the town side. And then there's also a county portion that's being talked about. Have you gotten a confirmed number to what that will be?
No, the closest is that it's going to be based on per capita.
Right.
And, but an exact number, no, that yet. So no, that's all I can say. I know right now per capita, but what the number is, they haven't heard yet.
Right. I mean, I've seen some and the only reason I'm asking, I've seen some numbers that are in the $3+ million range. And of course, I have nothing to hang on that. And I'm looking for an official source and I can't find that.
Yeah, no, we haven't seen anything since Larson sent out a letter to the mayor saying that giving us 2 numbers for town and Board of Ed side. And the Board of Ed lost a few thousand, so they're under 900,000.
Right. Okay.
And as far as both those numbers go that Alan referred to, the town hasn't received any of that money yet, right?
No, we're supposed to receive it, I think, by May 10th, based on the legislation that half the money has to be sent. We're stuck by having it has to go to the state first, then come to us. It's not going directly to the town. Like the cities are getting their portion directly from the federal government, but ours is coming through the state.
Right. Under 50,000, I think was the number.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the state gets it May 10th, and then we get it after, or we'll get it by May 10th.
I'm hoping that we get it by May 10th.
Okay.
But you did say the state, so that's an impediment.
Right. So one way or another, we're going to get some more revenue, whether it's the end of this fiscal year or into the next one.
Yep. We'll set up a special fund to let the money sit there until we figure out what we can spend it on, or maybe we'll just figure it out ourselves. Not tell anybody.
Well, Mona's doing a great job on paperwork and figuring it out and getting it rejected and reapproved. And
Thanks. I'll do it again.
And that May 10 number is for the municipal portion, or is that municipal and county? Because I've heard, the numbers are all over the place for the county one, and it's substantial. So I wasn't sure if that's, if we're just going to get, and from what I understand, the municipal piece is going to, and the municipal piece is going to come in like 2 portions. So I don't know if the county is going to mirror that structure or on the timeline, or if it's going to be a totally different animal.
Yeah, we don't know the timing and the breakout of the county yet, but you're correct about the other pieces, half in May and half a year from now.
and it has to be spent by 2024, if I remember the documents for that.
Yeah, December calendar year. And
Calendar year, okay.
Yeah.
That was my question on if it was beginning.
yeah, because I think the Board of Ed has to spend it by like school year by June of that year.
Okay.
The town has to do it by 12/31.
So many unknowns coming into this, and it's, of course, right as we start to approach budget time too.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't figure out what it can help us do.
Well, I think that's the question we're all looking for is
Mhm.
what do we use it for? And we're all reading the same documents, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a wait and see and hope for the best on it. But those
Yep.
are real numbers. I mean, if our numbers are correct, we're talking in excess of $5 million.
Yep.
of course, we don't know that we're 100% correct on that figure. So, all right, we'll continue this, I guess, in a month from now and see if we got more guidance.
Hopefully.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn then.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Okay,
Carries
great.
3-0. Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Aye.
Take care.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll see you next Thursday. I'm going to mention at the town council meeting, but you can spread the word that setting up a tour of the community center on Wednesday, the 21st, sometime after 3 o'clock. So we're going to have the architect and probably the construction company there take us through. And Alan knows what a good time it is.
I can see how
The
many
experience. It should be nice here. The tiles are in the bathroom this time, I think.
There you-
Yeah, they're, I think they're finishing up the brick in the back of the building and starting to put the windows in they said in the art room. So it's starting to sort of look like a building.
Is this this is a in-person tour and not a virtual tour?
Yeah. Yeah.
Be good if we could just take a couple pictures or a quick recording or something to put it up online, if we progress photos for folks.
Oh, talk to
Depending
Brian
how-
Addy. Talk to Brian Addy. He's the cameraman for the PBC.
I'll ask him for some photos, definitely.
Even if it's just one, just throw it up there, make people feel good,
Sure.
especially on the tiles in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we'll talk at the council meeting, I guess, Monday
Yep.
night then.
Good.
Take care,
All
everybody.
right,
Okay,
good night,
thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Aye.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Good night.